Well, we have a little bit of a different atmosphere today. Joining me on this YouTube channel day is Mr. Jason Kunen, my good friend. Jason, please introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are and why we're sharing our screen currently.
Thanks so much, Keith. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Kunen. I am currently a teacher of philosophy and religious studies at St. Andrew's School in Delaware. I studied philosophy and psychology at Haverford College. I've written a couple of different articles in philosophy, and some of my interests lie in philosophical works, psychological works, and thinking about the meaning of life, thinking about metaphysics, ontology, global philosophy, thanks to, I give credit to my mentor, Ashok Gangadine, and also my martial arts teacher, David Machine, for inspiring me. And so Keith invited me to have a conversation on some of these big questions that I often tend to include in my classes for my students.
Yep, and as you guys have gotten the vibe probably already, if you're used to watching my videos, you know that Jason is one of the most perfect people to have on this channel as a guest. He's going to share some knowledge. Usually whenever I talk with Jason, we have hour-long conversations, and the last conversation we had was none the different. And I said, all right, we're going to be recording, we're going to put these on my YouTube channel, we're going to share some of this information. So we got a couple of topics that I'm going to be separating into a few videos today. Our first topic is going to focus on how to use the minds to improve yourself. So I've touched upon this in a lot of my videos, but today we're going to go a little more in depth with Jason to kind of uncover a couple of secrets that you may have not known already and try to find if something really resonates with you.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two things to break down here in your question, right? So the first is how to use your mind, and then improving yourself. So on the first one, I mean, this is something that I've just recently started telling my students, is that if you think about it, we're almost never educated or taught or even made aware that we can direct our minds or how to use them. So we're conditioned in particular ways, and our minds basically operate on autopilot from there. So, you know, we experience the world and we accumulate these different preferences and various judgments, whether good or bad. And eventually the collection of these things becomes a filter through which all of our other life experiences are interpreted through. And so we're largely driven unconsciously by these thoughts, these judgments, these preferences, these prejudices, these reactions, and we're oblivious about where they come from and how they affect our relationships and our experiences.
That's a big deal as far as like the experiences go, because I know a lot of people who I kind of mentioned in some of my videos that if you're very set in your ways, it's hard for you to deviate from that norm.
The first thing I like to say is that, you know, I like to ask the question, how do you get rid of a bad habit? You have to become aware of it first. You can't get rid of something that you don't know is there. And so this is where I like to talk about mindfulness and meditation. I know a lot of people, you know, have been joining mindfulness movements and yoga and meditation, which are great practices, and we certainly fleshed it out some more. But I mean, I think the first step is really even just paying attention to our minds and paying attention to our reactions. Beginning meditation practices often focus on anchoring the mind in order to improve concentration. So whether that's a visualization, whether that's what they call a body scan, whether it's counting the breath, all of these practices are designed to develop ultimately your concentration, leading into a meditative state. But then that's not where it stops. The idea is that, right, because you can't pay attention unless you learn how to sustain your attention on something first. So you do these practices, and then from there, that concentration expands to, perhaps a better word would be focus, sort of an open awareness of what's taking place in the present moment. And through that awareness, that's how you can start to pay attention to these reactions.
We mentioned this on many of our talks. Being in the moment is so critical. And when people say that to you, you're thinking, okay, I just have to be in the moment. But nobody understands that there are practices in place like meditation and different forms of concentration to prepare you for that. And in your mind, you're thinking, oh, well, I don't really need it because I think I can handle my situations well. But life loves to throw whatever it possibly can at you at times where it may even feel like you're not prepared. I'm talking about the universe in general, but when you are prepared, especially when you're prepared and ready at all times by practicing stuff like that, it's woo. And I feel like you don't realize it until you just continue to do it. You know, some people get stuck in that, like, oh, I meditated for a week and I didn't see a difference, so I stopped. Is that what you do when you work out? You work out for a week and you see a difference, you stop?
Right, exactly. I mean, we're very comfortable with the idea of I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to run and sort of in these sort of small ways break my body down for it to get stronger, right? But we almost never consider doing the same thing with the mind, right? We never think about exercising the mind in certain ways. And this is basically what it's doing. So really these concentration techniques are designed to lead you into a state of meditation. It's not, oh, I sat down for 5 minutes, so I meditated, right? That's just a flaw in our language. Really, these practices are designed to get you into a state of meditation.
Yeah, and I guess like it's funny because you hear people talk about it, you hear me talk about it all the time on my channel, the power of meditation and focus. And a lot of times it's also a matter of like we're repeating the same process, you know, as far as meditation goes, counting breath. We're repeating that process, and for the people who are trying to think like, how is this really going to help me, and they don't necessarily see it, are there other ways they can really prepare for something like that?
Seated meditation, mindfulness, yoga, all of these are great practices, but ultimately it has to go beyond the yoga mat. It has to go beyond a sitting practice, right? These things are tools that we use in order to get in touch with that part of ourselves that is peaceful and tranquil, and learning to still those interior waters, if you will, speaking metaphorically. But I mean, it can be any practice. The most important thing is that level of attentiveness, is that paying attention. So it could be swimming, it could be martial arts, it could be skateboarding, it could be teaching, whatever it is. The idea is learning to pay attention, because it's in the paying attention that we can begin to watch those emotional reactions, to watch those habits, that when somebody comes up to me and puts something on my desk, or, you know, when a colleague comes over and says something and I sort of react to that, all of those things are areas that give us an opportunity to practice. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that people make, or maybe I should say one of the things that people aren't informed about when they begin meditation practice on their own, which is why it's helpful to have a teacher sometimes, is you have to take a non-judgmental attitude towards meditation and towards developing this awareness. Because a lot of people would say, oh, you know what, I tried it a few times and I kept getting distracted, and so it didn't work. But the whole point is to catch yourself getting distracted, because the more you catch yourself, the more you'll be able to stay with it. Mm-hmm. And so this idea is learning to just watch without any evaluative content, without saying, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is it good or bad? What, is it working? Is it not working? And just pay attention.
You think someone's repeating the same thing, giving the same advice, you'd think it'd be one of the most like powerful tools that we can possibly take hold of. That's to whomever really understands and grasps that and practices it. I think I tell people, like, even if you take 5 minutes in the morning, like everyone has 5 minutes in the morning. I don't care who you are. You have 5 minutes in the morning to sit down and meditate. And if you can make that a practice and do exactly that and catch yourself, then you're on the right track. Taking what you learn, taking your abilities. I tell people all the time, when I'm out and about and there's a million things going on, I know how to focus. I know how to say, okay, what needs to be done? What do I have to prioritize? What can be done now? What do I have the power to control? No matter what goes on in your life, outside, inside, you can always control your breathing. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of meditation I enjoy. I sit down, and for that time, I am in control of this moment. Nothing and no one can change it.
The attitude of what right now is lacking, right? And just going back to the breath, right? Mm-hmm. So all of this gets to that first part of your question, right? Which is, how do you use your mind? But then there's the second part, which is improving yourself.
Yep.
Right. And this one gets tricky because we talk a lot about self-improvement, and, you know, especially there's sort of a strong movement of positive psychology. There's something that goes beyond it, because in a way, and I might say something, you know, perhaps a little paradoxical here, but in a way, improving yourself requires letting go of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of one of the things I mean by that is, you know, the concept that we have of ourself goes back to that filter that we talked about in the beginning. My whole collection of preferences and judgments and all of this sort of accumulated psychological baggage that I carry with me, I've identified myself with it. Going back to your phrase, the phrase we brought up, battlefield thinking, right? I've got my whole collection of psychological baggage, my preferences, my likes and dislikes, etc. And so when I encounter something, I'm reacting from there. And as we become more mindful and learn to step back and watch the lens that we have, a sensitivity to the lens we're using, what my teacher liked to call a lensitivity. Once we develop that lensitivity, you start to make some distance between you and some of those preferences and those prejudices and those reactions. So in a way, your quality of life is improving by almost letting go of certain aspects of what you thought of as yourself.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway that people could look forward to after practicing all of this and after going through these motions? Like what do you believe they could look to in themselves and say, I'm gonna be like this after I put in all of this work?
That's a great question. And it's not an easy one to answer, because there's part of me that wants to say, you know, the very practice of mindfulness will make a difference in the style and quality of your life. And, you know, and I think that's really ultimately what it's designed for. It allows you to step back from your emotional reactions. I like to use the metaphor of meditation as you're sitting by the side of the river without falling into it every time. And so think about the amount of times we get swept away by our emotional reactions or responses to things. We're carried away by it. And meditation is climbing back out of the water, sitting by and sort of recognizing it. So the very practice in and of itself allows you to be more calm and to be more tranquil and to make some space and distance. But at the same time, in a way, it is an end unto itself. I mean, especially, sorry, I've got to invoke my religious studies philosophy teacher self here for a second. You know, going back to context and its roots in India and the various contemplative practices that have arisen in the West, right? That there is some, you know, there is some goal to it too, right? In a more spiritual context. So, you know, it both is its own end, whether it's directed towards some spiritual principle or enlightenment or union with God. So, you know, I've heard, you know, some Buddhist teachers say, you know, this mindfulness movement is great, but what are you being mindful for? For what? And on the one hand, it's to say, well, to live a better life, to live a more compassionate life, a life where we help the suffering of ourselves and others. And also there's something about it where it is its own goal in a way, if that makes any sense. So it almost has this paradoxical but yet coherent framework to it in terms of why we do meditation.
Mastering that art, I think at the end of the day, is going to give different benefits to different people. The biggest motivator for me has been finding little things with my mental state in my day-to-day that I believe I could improve upon. And that's what's kept me doing my meditations. I tell everyone, like, I find it easier to remember names. I find it easier to pull my train of thought if I happen to go on a tangent with someone or something else. I have less of those like, oh, what were we talking about? Or little things like that I've seen that I've improved on since I started doing meditation. So I feel like if you're able to hold on to those things and be proud of saying to yourself, like, my concentration is so good, my focus is so good, I have control of my emotions, which get ready for the next video because we're going to be talking a lot about emotions in that one. I also feel like at the end of the day, there should come it comes with that sense of pride after doing it too. I think everyone's going to experience differently, but I guess the point of my question, which you pretty much answered, is if you're able to find that core and hold on to it, then you're going to carry it with you and it's going to become part of you.
And that's what all these practices are designed. It's, whether it's a seated meditation or something more active, an active practice, the idea is to take that skill that you're developing of learning to pay attention and carry it forward in every part of your life, from morning, noon, and night. And that itself, people can see sort of how it changes the quality of life.
I hope that you guys have taken a lot on this episode, where we pretty much covered a lot having to do with meditation and concentration and that power that you can hold, that you could use to change your life. We're going to be doing a few more episodes with Jason. So please, if you did enjoy this video and you feel like it is a worthy video to share to other people on YouTube, please leave a like and share it with someone, and leave a comment on a technique that you do and how meditation and concentration has changed your life. So until this next video, my name's Keith Fiandra. That man is Jason Kunen. And we'll be seeing you a little bit more on these upcoming episodes. Take care.